We're going to look at an age-old question. How do fish react in a river after you've hooked a few of them? Do the fish turn off completely? Does a river shut down? I'm on a river that has had very light fishing activity recently, almost no pressure at all. We shall take a look at a run underwater first. Then we're going to nymph that run, and afterwards going to go back under the water to observe how the behavior of the fish may or may not change. Let's see what happens. First, we view the run we are looking at from the bird's eye perspective to help us understand the structure that is there and the overall nature of the water. On the far side, we see a submerged tree with its root ball upstream. There are some overhanging branches providing shade. Then to the left of the scene, which is downstream, there is a larger tree that is partially dead and fallen into the river. On the near side, the river bottom is made up of gravel, the same as at the head of the run. Down the center of the run, although the glare somewhat obscures it, the riverbed is lighter in color and most likely sand-like in consistency. The far side, following what is probably an underwater seam or change in the current created by the tree stump, is a darker, somewhat deeper trench. Overall, the center of the run is about chest deep and the head of the run is maybe about thigh deep at most. It drops off right about in line with where the root ball is. Now let's go underwater and have a closer look. We start near the bottom of the run where the fallen tree is and can see that its submerged branches have snagged a lot of debris, leaves, grass, etc. Sometimes you find fish hiding in this type of hard to reach place as it really looks well protected, but sometimes there's just too many branches and debris and it isn't an easy spot for a fish to navigate. So, surprisingly for some anglers, fish don't always hide in these tangled areas. Your fishing line is probably thankful for that too. We move next to just upstream of those branches and more in the center of the run where the lighter colored bottom is. We can confirm, as we suspected from the overhead view, that it's a sand-like riverbed here. And what species of fish do we find there? It's a mix, but is likely 70% suckers, 25% pike minnows, and maybe 5% whitefish. Whitefish very often like the finer gravel and sand for feeding in. Both pike minnows and suckers both prefer slower moving waters. It should come as no surprise, therefore, that in the slower, deeper part of the run where the bottom is sandy and the slower currents exist, that we find these three species gathered here. A complete absence of trout, though. Going further upstream, we approach the head of the run where the shallower water transitions into the deeper water, about equal to the submerged tree and its root ball. You can just see the dark form of the root ball sort of on the right-hand side. Now we find some trout. 1, 2, 3 rainbow trout as far as I can make out. And distinctly different from the other fish, they are more active near the head of the run and not right on the bottom. Now that we know where some fish are, let's wet a fly and fish for them. That feels like a spunky rainbow. He took that pretty fast. Very nice. Ah, definitely a rainbow. Your hand nice and wet, give him a nice release. Look at that beautiful fish. Another one. Looks like he's probably about similar size. Just as scrappy, less jumping though. Keep him out of that tree. Whoa, 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 whoa. I think the heron was mad too. Ooh-wee. Oh yeah. Definitely. A little bit bigger fish maybe. completely different coloration. Much darker colored fish. Oh, get that a beauty. Back into the water you go. Right over by that woody debris. There was one, came off pretty quick. Ooh, bit of a breeze blowing now here. Look, my light fly might need a little bit of help staying down there. Get that rod tip a bit lower. Right in that soft spot there. Bit smaller fish, keep them out of those trees. Downstream, all over the place. Could wrestle this guy a little bit faster in, a little bit smaller. Wow. Still a nice little 25 centimeter fish or so. Great little rainbow. Oh yeah, gorgeous fish. What he lacked in size, he made up for in beauty and strength. Just keeping the rod tip really low to the water here because we do have a fair bit of wind blowing along here now. You can probably hear it in the trees maybe. Using a fairly light fly because the water is pretty slow, so I don't want to go too heavy yet, but I will. Change up and go a little bit heavier coming up soon just to get the fly moving in a different position to a different depth, change it up a bit. Okay, just upgraded to a little bit heavier fly. 4mm bead. Okay, fish it a little bit deeper now. Sometimes you need to do that just to get at the fish that are hesitant to come up on a lighter fly. Not all fish hang out at the same depth. Slight little bump. Oh, and that is that's a pike minnow. The hit felt a little bit different on that one. Still nice fish. Didn't quite fight as hard as the rainbows today, but I'm not going to complain. Now I had to go to a heavier fly to get down to that pike minnow, which makes sense. They're usually closer to the bottom. And is that another one? Oh, definitely fighting more like a pike minnow than a trout. Just hard pulling though. Yep, another decent pike minnow. A little bit shorter battle, a little bit more of a different struggle pulling instead of jumping and racing a little bit, but still equal in size and good pulling power. But so far, going to a 4mm bead, getting down just that fraction deeper, completely different species of fish being found. Gone from rainbow trout to pike minnow, which is important. If you want to avoid pike minnow, don't fish so deep. If you want to catch pike minnow, go deeper. Finishing with my short fishing break where I landed 5 fish, I want to return underwater to see if I can detect any changes in the behavior of the fish. From the position they sit in to whether feeding seems to have changed or not. And I'm going to concentrate my attention on the trout for 2 reasons. First, I think most people prefer trout, and second, because there were fewer trout than coarse fish, it may be much easier to identify individual trout as opposed to which pike minnow I actually caught. This fish here is the first one I landed. Probably about 15 minutes has gone by since I released it. I can tell this mainly by the distinctive short dorsal fin it has. Not only have I observed regular feeding from this fish, it is back roughly to where it was before, and just as before has little fear of the camera. It seems no worse for wear. Now, I didn't expect to see it dead on the bottom or injured, as my handling skills for releasing fish are fairly good, but I might have expected the fish to be at least a bit more shy, maybe off the feed for a bit, hiding in the shadows of the deeper waters. But no, I mean, it's not in an unsafe spot. It is in deepish kind of water. It's an overcast day, so minimal bright light, and I think this fish is here maybe more so for 2 other reasons. Because there is a noticeable change in the riverbed substrate, that is, it is right on the spot where the gravel changes to sand, this location would have a noticeable change in current or water speed. The slowing of the water here would cause more sand to be deposited, and that in turn makes it an easier spot to sit and a good delivery path for food. Let's see if we can see any other trout. If I recall, there were about 3 rainbow trout in total around the transition zone before, and I definitely landed and released 3 trout right in that area while fishing. I can certainly see 2 trout here and a whitefish, so perhaps there is one still being shy, hiding in the background. How would I summarize what we saw here today? Well, here's a view of the layout of the run and its notable features. We have differing riverbed material, a substrate. We have a number of submerged trees, and we have a variation in depth and water speed. Now here's where we found the different species of fish, either through underwater footage or by fishing for them. Each species had its own preference as to the water it liked, and when you study that level of information, you get better at learning which water types you should focus on more, and as a result, catch more fish. First point, different fish species had clearly different preferences for water types, and we proved that in actual fishing as well. Suckers, pike minnows, and some whitefish were in the slower waters over the finer sediment. The trout, along with some whitefish, were closer to the head of the run and near the transition zones where either there was an abrupt change in either water depth, a drop-off, or water speed. When I fished a lighter fly, I got the more active rainbow trout. When I fished a heavier fly, I got the more bottom-oriented fish like the suckers. Second point, surprisingly, the behavior of most fish did not change much after I fished a run. But there may have been some subtle changes. I managed to find 1 or 2 of the fish I hooked and released, and they were feeding actively again, but the third fish, the larger one, I wasn't able to spot. There seemed to be no change in the northern pike minnow and sucker behavior, though it is tough to tell as there were so many of them, and if any of them changed their behavior, it would be lost in the masses. But in general, they were in the same position and with the same feeding activity. Even if you aren't interested in suckers, the important note to take away from their seemingly lack of change is that they at least have not been significantly scared and panicked. And that's important because trout definitely take their cues from suckers if danger is around. In other words, if the suckers panic, that always makes the trout panic too. It is similar to herd mentality. Even when just a few fish panic, the whole group usually goes into high alert and panics as well. Back to the trout, I couldn't see all the trout afterwards, and I would blame part of that on the silty waters. But in general, those I could see were still near the head of the run next to the changing current and the substrate, and acting much in the same way as they did before. The one that was very curious about the camera then was still very curious about it now, and all those I could see were definitely feeding. For the most part, it was business as usual, although I suspect maybe one fish had taken off further into the far side where I couldn't quite see it, so perhaps at least one of the fish had gone off to find protection in a sheltering lie. Either way, I suspect that after 15 minutes, I bet we could have refished that run and likely caught 2 of those same trout again. What does that imply? Well, some fish may reset very fast in 15 minutes or less and be very capable of being caught multiple times in a day. To answer the question then as to how do fish react in a run after you have hooked a few of them, well, On this day at least, the fish behavior changed somewhat after the run was fished thoroughly, but not as drastically as I might have thought. Not every fish went off to sulk and hide after being hooked, and to me that's pretty interesting how active some of these fish stayed. But I believe that these results were affected by the fact that these fish only experienced light fishing pressure, until I worked them over in this video that is. This day was just a small sample. What I intend to do is to repeat this experiment several more times in the future to demonstrate how fish react to fishing pressure, and how we can better adapt to the situation as anglers. So please watch for future episodes where I continue this experiment under different conditions. But for now, thank you for watching, and I hope you found this footage as interesting as I did.